Hi all, welcome to the session 4 of Career Content. Hope you're doing fine. We hope you have covered from session 1 to 3 before continuing with the session 4. So, moving on to the main content. In this session, we are going to teach you about React hooks. So, basically, instead of just going over the car website, we just thought it will be more efficient for you. It will be learning more about the React hook. Is that so? That's because hooks are the major parts of the React which makes up what the React is. So basically, it's like hooks have made the React much more flexible, making it easier to manage state, handle side effects, and also to use logic. And also they help us write cleaner codes, optimize performance, and also create more predictable and maintainable applications. So basically, hooks are the one which makes you a better React developer. So we just thought of teaching you more of the React hooks and then just going over the threads. So on doing so, let me just start with more interesting and amazing hooks, which even though may go out of the scope of our total website, are very interesting for you to learn. Okay, so first of all, let me teach you about the use member hook. Starting with the use member hook. So here's a small code snippet which may be useful for you to learn about what the use member is. So take some time to process this code and then I'll just go on with the explanation. Okay. So for explaining this part, so basically this is like an input bar which helps you in incrementing numbers, 64. And then these are the values which is the output. Like this is a number which you can acquire when on doubling this input bar number. And then there is a normal button which toggles between hi and hello on clicking. Okay, it's pretty basic, right? But there's a question. What is it? So so if you can see, actually, or instead of just doubling this number, we're actually using this low function, which instead of just doubling this number, but also runs a for loop for a huge number of times. That actually that whenever you call this function, you're basically writing this function and like, you're basically letting this for loop run for these many times before going on with the further processing. So why is that so? Because I just wanted to replicate the function of a complex website, which even though it's not in here, it may be used in case of any industrial grade sets. Okay, so for to replicate it, I just thought of making it more complicated by increasing this time complexity. Okay, cool. Okay. So such that on doing that, so if you can notice correctly, you can see a small minute delay, like half second delay between the changing of this number and this number. Why is that so? Obviously, because this forward. Okay. And then for a more significant one, you can say this the toggling of number, the toggling of high and hello is taking like almost a second to change. Which should not be a case in case of any pop websites. Okay. So that's the problem in here. As this for loop runs for these many times, it basically slows down this whole process, making the website somewhat like a laggy and draggy one. So, to avoid it, we are gonna use the use memo. Okay, I can just demonstrate it. Just for this, for using it. Okay, cool. Now, the use memo has been implemented, but before explaining you to the like before explaining you about the use memo, I would like to insert, I would like to add on this point. Like, whenever you're just trying to change any state, like, whenever just try to toggle between the buttons, or just try to change the number, you're basically re-rendering the website, right? On doing that, so whenever the website tries to re-render, it basically moves on from the hierarchy from top to bottom every time. Whenever you just try to re-render it, okay? Such that even though the toggling of this button between hi and hello does not depend on this slow function, it tends to give out a delay. That's because as the hierarchy, as the hierarchy of this button is technically below the slow function, it, tec- it tends to call the slow function again and again each time it, it is re-rendered. Okay, that's the reason for this delay. So now with the use of this use move hook, we can totally avoid it. How is that so? So the use memo what it basically does is it basically caches the number which second the return value of the number is basically cached such that it does not tend to call the function again and again each time even though the state is not changed. Okay, now let me just show the result. Okay, if you can see there is no delay in between the topping of this number. If you can compare between both, there's almost a second in delay, but here there's nothing. That's because this 2 here has been cached where I used to move. That's that whenever this function is called, it just basically returns the 2 from its cache memory and not a function called from top to bottom. Okay, that's the function of the use number hook. It's pretty interesting, right? Yeah. Mm. The use number hook is one of the important hooks and an interesting one also which can be used for any type of appliances you can think of. Okay? Hope you all have understood about the use from it. So further moving on, let's see about the use of hook. So just like the use from a hook, this is also an interesting hook which may be useful for you in the further moving on with the react. Here's the first step for explaining the use case of the use ref hook. So I hope it does not need any further explanation, I guess, as in case of this concept. So basically, when I just try to print my name, automatically prints it in this div tag. Okay? Yeah. I hope it does not need any explanation. So now, what I'm trying to do now, I'm just going to try to give the number of render counts when I just to print it. Okay. So for that, let me just use and use that hook the which live for the render count. I would like to use the use of a tool for updating this whenever the render runs. Only for this, I would like to restart this whole function. So in this, as you can notice, there's an infinite loop running here, as the render count just goes on and on. So I will have to stop it here. So now what was the problem? So basically, whenever, so if you can remember from the session two, so what was the use of the use effect loop? So the use effect loop is triggered whenever there's a change in case of any components such that the use effect trigger the use state hook, and then the use state automatically as whenever called tends to wear into the whole component such that it basically runs on a infinite loop. Okay, that is simply the use effect triggers the use state hook, and then the use state triggers the use effect hook. It's basically like a recursion calling which goes on and on, moving on with an infinite loop. So, for to avoid it, we are gonna use the use ref hook. Okay, now for to avoid it, let me initialize the use ref hook. First of all, let me remove the use state hook. Let me place it. Okay. So now, in this case of use effect, let me remove this one and then do a simple render count. Okay. But especially in this case of user, there's a special function or a module called as the current, which can be used for updating this current value of the any variable. Mm, but now, whenever you just try to change anything, now, whenever a event is triggered, like whenever any changing status triggered, the render is correctly focused. Okay, it's great. Great. So useref is the one which can be used for specifying the render count at any specific component in a given code snippet. Such that on doing the flow, the useref allows you to directly reference and manipulate the DOM elements in the functional components without using the class components or the query selector. It can be used for focusing any one tag, like any one tag, which can be useful for in case of anything. I've just implemented the usage of the user, but it can be used for any type of event, like whenever we just want to change a particular function or a variable, whenever just a component, like a very small component in the whole website is triggered, we can use the user for. I hope you have understood the usage of this user for. Okay, cool. Now, hope you're all familiar with this user of hope. So now, moving on to the next one, it is the use callback. So let me demonstrate using a for snippet. Okay. Yeah. So this is the code snippet for this use callback, for the usage of this use callback loop. So if you can notice, it's basically similar to that of a use memo, like the example which we used for the use memo hook. But hence here we are not using this flow function. We don't need it here. And also, whenever I just try to trigger it, it returns the number plus one and plus one. Okay, cool. Okay. So now, taking from the top, here's the initiation of the use network. And also here's the function which returns the original number, the number incremented by 1, and the number incremented by 2. And then here's the toggling function for this hi and hello toggling. Okay, and then yeah, similarly the same case. But here if you can notice, here's a function. There is a passing of the props. Like there's a passing of the props. If you don't know what props basically is, it's very simple. It's basically like sending off a value from the single component to the next component. Such that list is another component which is present in here, and then this is basically for to send this function from this code snippet to the next code snippet. Okay, yeah. So for to explain this, it is basically let's say use state to hook to, and then if you can see in this is the one which prints it. Right? It gets the array as an input and then it iterates and prints the value each by one, which can be useful for the demonstration purposes. Okay, and also on doing the throw, there's an updating function that can be also. Okay. Now, if you can see, now if you can see, whenever I just try to update anything, it updates automatically, which can be predictable. Just simple. But in this case, I just want this input function to re-render. Like I just want it to output the updating function. But here, if you can notice, this I button to updates the like it to re-renders the whole function, which should not be in case. So what can we do? We use the callback function. So basically, what this callback here is used for is to re-render, like is used to memorize a function, ensuring that the same function instance is returned between the renders unless its dependencies change. Okay, so it's basically like a use memo hook, but in this case of use memo hook, it basically memorizes a variable or a value, single value. But in case of use callback, it basically memorizes the whole function such that whenever the function is triggered, the re-render happens and the other function does not. tends to re-render the uh, okay, uh, demonstrating now demonstrating the use callback. Useful. Now the use callback often successfully fault, and then this one is for setting the dependency such that only the use callback hook is called and the re-render happens whenever there's a change in the number. Okay, now let me go to the expert class. Uh, Okay, now as you can notice, whenever I just try to change it, it changes at, at the re-renders. And then in this case of using the button, it does not hold right. Like only the change in state of the number tends to trigger the use callback. Like yeah. And then this button does not update anything. Okay. So this is the usage of the use callback hook. So now, what can this use state like the use callback hook be used for? So when a parent component passes a function as a prop to the child component, the child may re-render every time the parent renders, even if the function hasn't changed. You can see this in case of the list function. Like it updates whenever the parent renders. But if you want to avoid that case, you basically use the callback to prevent, which helps prevent unnecessary renders by ensuring that the small function reference is passed unless its dependency is changed. Okay, and also when you pass a function to use effect, if the function is defined on every render, it can trigger unnecessary effect executions, which can cause for a large number of overheads, which can be avoided by using the use callback also. Okay, I hope you have somewhat like familiar with it.
So okay guys, I hope you have understood about the use callback hook. So for and then let me move on to the okay guys, I hope you have understood about the use callback hook. So then let me move on to the next hook which is called as the use ID hook. So use ID hook is basically one of the most simplest and also one of the useful hook which you might be studying about right now. Okay. So now moving on to the coding part. So then, as you can see, it's like a basic code snippet of an input which has an ID name. Okay, this name is somewhat important, so please to remember it. And also, it's basically a simple non-functional. Like you can type whatever you want. Okay, code right, and then for for technical purposes, I may have a I may have an option to use it again. Like for example, I may have a use case in which I have to use this use ID multiple times. So let me create it. Okay, so great. But okay, now it's implemented. Now as you can see, there are two function components. Like call it like yeah. But in the front end, you don't have any errors in it. But as in case of any technical websites and also any industry grade websites, you may have to access it based on the IDs. Okay, so how do I do? You basically go on like if I want to access this label based on the ID now, I will just go to like get by ID, and I will give the name as the variable. Okay, like I will give it as the argument, such that as these both have a same ID, I may get a scenario in which both are collided. Like if I so for the demonstration for the user ID, let me just give you a small scenario in which it can be useful. So imagine you are building a survey form, like you want a name of the person, and then where each question is represented by a reusable question component. Yeah, say the name component. Each question has a label and an input field. Obviously, users can dynamically add or remove questions. Okay, you can do it in the server side. Okay, so in this, without using the user ID, you may have to manually assign this ID part, such that when you are trying to use this content, there is a high chance that as the ID is same, there's a high chance for that ID may collide and that causing accessibility and functionality issues. So for to avoid that, we are going to use the use ID hook. So let me just first import it. Cool. That's all. So now in this case for the use ID, I'm directly going to give a variable ID. Okay. So now do that for each component, for each functional component, the function will be getting a unique key ID, which will be more usable, and also it does avoids the collision issues. So basically, for small summarizing, the user ID is used for unique ID generation, such that it generates a unique ID which prevents collision, and also it can also avoid the manual assignment, such that there is no need for creating and ensuring uniqueness of ID, which reduces the potential for errors. And also, it also allows for the server-side recurring, such that the user ID ensures IDs are consistent between the client and server, which prevents the mismatches that can occur with the random ID generators. Okay? Okay. So now for this technical, like the practical part, if you can see, okay, yeah, if you can see, the ID for this one is R1, and then this one is R3. It's about like unique, right? We have not set it manually, but had been automatically set by the server, which allows for the more user friendly and also more collision free and error free websites. Okay, that's the use for the use ID. It's one of the most simplest and also one of the most usable, the most efficient hooks of all. Okay, I hope you all understood it. Okay, so that's it for now. Let me see you next week. Thank you. Bye bye.